Hi, I'm Danielle. Welcome to my perfume journal. And in this video, I'm accepting a somewhat indirect challenge from my friend Pep, who you know here on YouTube as the Scentinel. So recently, Pep published an absolutely brilliant video that you must watch. I'll link it down below, and it is called The 6 Stages of Fragrance Madness. It is without a doubt the best and most comprehensive window into the experience of what it is like to be a lifelong perfume enthusiast. What it is like to be someone who has taken an interest in perfume to levels that few others could possibly understand. Now, in his video, Pep has created some really clever and once again brilliant titles for each of the 6 stages of fragrance madness he has identified. And in my video, I'm not going to clone or dupe his titles. You really need to watch his video for yourself and hear him talk through each of his stages because it is so wonderfully presented in such a personal way as only Pep can do. So when Pep said to me, I look forward to your video on this topic, I took inspiration from him to describe my own 6 stages of my descent into fragrance madness and to tell you a little bit about how those stages have shown up in my own life. And every perfume that's mentioned in this video that I happen to have in my collection is on this tray. And those that aren't in my collection, I will pop a picture up on the screen as we go through these 6 stages of fragrance madness. And because you know that I am an 80s girl through and through, I have connected each of my own stages of fragrance madness to songs from the 1980s. Okay, so every perfume enthusiast can probably pinpoint their scent awakening. For some of us, it happened in early childhood, and for others, it may have been later on in life. But no matter when it happened, we can name it, and that moment often comes with very specific memories associated with very specific people. So for me, stage 1 of my fragrance madness started in my childhood home. We lived in an extended family home with my parents and grandparents. We all lived under one roof. I was like Charlie Bucket from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but I didn't end up winning like a big chocolate factory. But I do have very specific moments of sitting on the floor of our bathroom and my grandparents' bathroom, opening up the cabinets and smelling absolutely everything inside of them. Some of the smells were perfumes and others were like various toiletries and products that one keeps in a bathroom, but they all carry very, very specific scent memories. So my grandfather, he was an Old Spice guy. He had a splash bottle of Old Spice aftershave in the cabinet, and that was it. Old Spice is spicy, it's aromatic, it's a little bit floral, it's got a little bit of like powdery softness in the base, it's a little bit ambery even. It's a classic scent, and I think it's one that many of us associate with a loved one. So my grandfather was a hardworking blue-collar kind of guy. He owned one blue suit that he pulled out of the closet for family weddings, and that was the extent of how fancy my grandpa got. But he did splash on some Old Spice after a clean shave, whether he was going to a family wedding or just going in the backyard to garden. And so it's a scent that I will always associate with my grandfather. Now, my grandmother was a homemaker her entire life. She never even learned how to drive. She walked everywhere. She cooked our family's meals every day. She had one fancy dress and one bottle of Estee Lauder Youth Dew on her dresser. Now, I remember I did not like the smell of Youth Dew at the time. I much preferred the smell of this beaded purse that she had, and it smelled like silk and old doublemint gum. But now I absolutely love Youth Dew. It's a thick, deeply spiced, unctuous, ambery perfume that absolutely reminds me of her. Another scent that really reminds me of my grandmother, though, is the smell of oil of Olay. My grandmother had the most beautiful skin right up until her late 90s. It was smooth, it was soft, and all she ever used her entire life was oil of Olay. And oil of Olay at the time was a fluid rather than a cream. It was probably like glycerin based, and it was definitely highly fragranced. It had a very floral, very clean, very creamy kind of a scent. I'm sure there was some Lily of the Valley and some rose in the formula. And I think that specific scent memory is one of the reasons why I love creamy florals so much today. As far as my parents go, I definitely remember them having a few fine fragrances. And I remember that they both liked to smell good. So my dad at the time in the 70s, he was an Aramis guy. He may have splashed on some Old Spice now and again, but I'm pretty sure he was an Aramis guy through and through. And when my parents went to family weddings, that was really the only time any of the adults in my family ever went out anywhere, to a family wedding. So he would go out and he would splash Aramis on his face after shaving. And that is wild to me because cologne at the time that was marketed toward men was pretty much always sold in a splash bottle. I cannot imagine how badly it must have stung to splash a cologne on freshly shaved skin, but I guess we were just built differently back then. Anyway, Aramis is a very aromatic, spicy, somewhat leathery scent. It is both strong and gentle at the same time, and that is why it was really the perfect scent for my dad. In the 70s, my mom had 2 bottles of perfume. She had Rive Gauche from YSL and the classic Halston. Now, both of these perfumes were wildly popular in the 70s. And thinking back, I'm not really quite sure how they afforded these perfumes, but somehow they did. And I'm super grateful for that because these are the most formative scents in my memory bank when it comes to like the evolution of my eventual perfume obsession. And my mom's 2 perfumes could not have been more different. Rive Gauche is a very aldehydic, metallic floral chypre. It is like nothing else in the world. It is unique and unusual, and it is iconic for a very good reason. And I would say the same is true of Halston. Halston is by definition a chypre, but to me, it is one of the most interesting chypres ever made. It is a little bit fruity, it's a little bit sweet, it is deeply floral, it is slightly spiced, and it has this incredible ambery, woody, resinous, mossy base. I think it is a true work of art in the history of perfumery, and of course the bottle is legendary. Halston is still in production, but to me, it's one of those perfumes that's like so deeply embedded into my memory receptors while little me was sitting on the bathroom floor imprinting this scent into my developing brain that like any current formulation of this is just not going to feel quite the same. Aside from perfumes, I also remember my mother having a jar of Noxzema skin cream on the counter, which is like the 1970s version of micellar water. You'd take this cream and you'd spread it all over your face and it would take your makeup off, and then you'd give your face a good wash with a bar of soap. It's a very camphorous, medicinal smelling, very eucalyptus, menthol heavy cream. And somehow that scent was associated with like deep cleanliness back then. Using something like this made you feel super clean, super fresh, and that's probably because your face would be like absolutely burning after you used it. So in this childhood household of mine of scents, both perfumed scents and otherwise, like my grandmother was an amazing cook, so I think our house was always filled with scent of some kind. My grandfather was a gardener, and so our backyard was always teeming with flowers and vegetables. So I started turning into the kid who smelled everything she could get her hands on. A piece of new clothing, car leather, flowers, mud, dog treats, simmering pots on the stove, you name it, I wanted to smell it. And that led me to start asking for my own perfumes. So as a child, as a very young child, I received bottles of Sweet Honesty by Avon, as well as there were these like little pins that you'd wear on your clothing. They were usually kind of like holiday themed. I'm pretty sure I had a snowman one. And they opened like a locket and they had solid perfume inside, probably also Sweet Honesty at the time. And of course, there was the ubiquitous Love's Baby Soft, the powdery floral classic perfume. It's still in production today. It's about as close to the original as I remember. So these were my gateway perfumes. The first perfumes that would open up a portal to an absolute obsession with perfumes that would move me into the next stage of fragrance madness. So it's the 1980s. The tiger has been let out of her cage and she is hungry. And this period of time in like perfume history was one of the best times to be a budding perfume enthusiast. So I started high school in the early to mid 1980s when designer perfumes were in their absolute heyday. Everything in 80s pop culture was big. Hair was big, fashion was big, music was big, films, and most definitely perfumes. So because we were mall rats, we spent a lot of time in department stores at perfume counters checking out the lavish displays of popular perfumes. I mean, perfume displays in the department stores in the 1980s were unbelievable. And because perfume releases were kind of like few and far between from year to year, it was really more about like the changes of advertisements or like the new lotion and powder sets or new packaging that would draw us in. Magazine ads were the main source of our interest in perfumes. The ads included incredibly artistic representations of the perfume in print, and they were often accompanied by this like fold out paper perfume sampler that you could rub on your skin to try the perfume. I'm pretty sure this is how I discovered my all-time favorite perfume, Niki de Saint Phalle, a green floral chypre with the most incredible sandalwood base. I coveted the Parfum bottle of Niki de Saint Phalle. It's a blue cobalt glass cube with these lacquered and gold snakes entwined on the top. But that perfume, that bottle was so out of the realm of affordability for me. So I did have bottles of the EDT, and I went through multiple bottles of the EDT over the years. So besides mall ratting and magazines, I would say that the other way that we discovered perfumes back then is to smell them on other people. Like I remember this girl in my high school who came back from a trip with Paris from YSL and Ysatis from Givenchy before they even made their way to the US. And I remember being absolutely obsessed with the way that they smelled. So I started saving up my money from babysitting and from my after-school job to buy a bottle of Ysatis as soon as it made its way stateside. Now, Paris I never got, but I would definitely take advantage of those magazine samplers to enjoy that one whenever I could. Besides Ysatis and Niki, the other perfume that I would really call one of my signature scents back then was Lauren from Ralph Lauren. I wore this perfume more than any other. It's a really lovely green floral that kind of exudes that preppy style of the 80s. It's just effortlessly beautiful. So now that the perfume obsession is really taking flight, my mom and I started sharing perfumes with each other. We would give each other perfumes for birthdays and for Christmas every year throughout the decade. So I'm going to try to organize the perfumes that we shared by kind of like by scent family, because we had a lot of perfumes back then. I'd save up my money to buy my mom a bottle of perfume, and she'd always give me a bottle of perfume for a special occasion. So besides Lauren, the other green floral perfume that I wore a lot and shared with my mom was the original Liz Claiborne that came in the triangular bottles in primary colors. We had a number of powdery florals. We wore Vanderbilt by Gloria Vanderbilt, Oscar from Oscar de la Renta, and Anais, which is a powdery but also sharp white floral. In the category of spicier florals, we wore Tatiana from Diane von Furstenberg, we wore K de Krizia from Krizia, and we wore Gucci No. 1. In the spicy ambery category, we wore Opium, and I still have my bottle of Opium from the 1980s. Well, the most recent bottle, I'm sure we went through multiple bottles of that also in the 80s. And we wore Cinnabar from Estee Lauder. We wore lots of aldehydic white florals, things like White Linen from Estee Lauder, Beautiful from Estee Lauder, and Private Collection from Estee Lauder. And we wore Aromatics Elixir, which was a very unusual sort of botanical smelling aromatic floral perfume. And of course, the big giant florals, the tuberoses of the 1980s, Poison from Dior, White Shoulders from Evian, and the Honeyed Floral Bijan. Over a good period of time, like 20 years, the embers of the fire of loving perfume were highly, highly stoked for me. And I found myself sniffing away in the department stores every chance I could, even if I couldn't afford to add to my collection. And that's when the next stage began. So at this point in time, I was pretty much a designer perfume person. I didn't really know much about what else was out there, but something led me to start looking outside of the stores. And that something was an ad that I saw for an Ellis Brooklyn sample set. The set looked like a little library of books, and I thought, oh, that's pretty clever. It was like $20, so I bought it. And that sent a shockwave through my system that has really only started to calm down pretty recently. It was probably around 2016 at this point. I had only really been reading perfume content on kind of like a cursory level, an article here and there about a perfume I already knew about, but I hadn't really discovered the world of blogs and YouTube and forums and such. I was kind of a late bloomer when it comes to the online fragrance world. But after I got the Ellis Brooklyn sample set, I started heading down the FragCom rabbit hole. YouTube channels like Katie Puckrick and Ouch110, blogs and websites like Barbara Herman's amazing Yesterday's Perfume. And that eventually led me to Instagram and Facebook groups and websites that sold samples and decants. So at this time, I was still adding to my collection, but slowly. A Jo Malone perfume here and there, a full bottle of Ellis Brooklyn's Myth, but the really bonkers stuff was just on the verge of starting to happen. So like many of us, that's when the pandemic left me with a lot of extra time and even a little extra income because we weren't able to go out and do the things that we would normally do. So I found lots of fun ways to fill that gap, and that's when it all started with the samples. So at this stage of the game, I literally just wanted to smell all the perfume, like all of it. And samples were readily available. Anything I wanted to try, I could. So that is exactly what I did. I started buying samples upon samples upon samples, just like to catch them all like Pokemon. If I heard about it online, I wanted to sample it. And I did. I sampled designer perfumes, niche perfumes, indie perfumes. I just accumulated hundreds and hundreds of samples, and I was blowing through them like pieces of gum. And at this point, I also started buying a lot of bottles. I was buying lots and lots of cheap I was also buying a lot of things that were like heavily hyped on social media, brands that honestly I really don't even like anymore, but I was just really sucked into the whole online, gotta smell them all kind of a mindset. So I'm buying like a fiend. I'm buying dupes, clones, samples, blind buys, cheapies. I am not keeping to a budget. I am not thinking about what I'm adding into my collection. I'm just amassing tons of perfume. So while I'm on this path of consuming both content and products, I started an Instagram page and it was called Perfume Haiku. I described perfumes in short 17-syllable poems, and posting on that platform actually did three things for me. One, it fueled my desire to keep smelling everything. Two, it connected me to some really, really wonderful people like Pep, people who have actually become real life friends. And three, in a very strange turn of events, it led me to the next stage of my evolution as a perfume enthusiast. So now we are in recent years. My Instagram page is like mediumly popular. I'm getting offers of PR. I'm actually reaching out to brands to ask for PR. Brands I actually didn't even like or know about, okay? I was still in that Pokemon world of gotta catch them, gotta smell them all. And so one day I took a step back and I realized, you know what? I don't like this. I don't want this beautiful creative outlet about this hobby I love so, so much to start going down this route. Now, do not get me wrong. I have absolutely nothing against receiving PR. I have nothing against influencers. I have nothing against running a social media page as a side hustle. I think that is great as long as it's done with integrity and honesty and proper disclosure. But having a side hustle, that was like never my goal. And all of a sudden it just started to feel like that's where my page and my world of perfume enthusiasm was heading. So I pulled back and I started a series where I wrote a post about every single one of the perfumes in my collection, one perfume at a time. I revisited every single one of my perfumes. I thought and wrote about why I loved them, how they came to be in my collection, what memories they evoked, the stories they told, and what they meant to me. And if I couldn't think of anything to say about the perfume, if it didn't mean something to me or tell a story, or if I just didn't even like the perfume, then I got rid of the perfume. And that was the best thing I could have done because it reminded me of one thing and it taught me something else. It reminded me that perfume for me is so personal. It is deeply, deeply personal. It is an art form that I love and respect. It has always held a very strong place in my life. And the thing that it taught me is that I always want my perfume collection to be a reflection of who I am. I want my collection to be a mirror rather than a window. And this led me to the final stage of my evolution as a perfume enthusiast, the place where I am right now. So my love of perfume is here to stay. It is never, ever going to go away. It is a part of my identity. It is an enormously important aspect in my life. What I smell and what I smell like, it's a form of expression. It's a form of self-care. It's one of the ways that I appreciate the world around me. And if I had to sum it up in one word, I think the stage of perfume enthusiasm that I'm in right now is curiosity or openness. My head and my heart will be my guide. There are some truths that I am fully aware of at this stage of perfume madness. I know that there will always be a few unicorns that I will seek and try to find at a good price. Things like Boudoir from Vivienne Westwood or Midnight Poison from Dior. If I find them, great. I will be so happy to have them. And if I don't, that's okay too. I know that I will always be interested in finding affordable gems. Things like Neroli Intense from Jean en Provence. I know that I will always keep a little room in my budget for those exciting blind buys that could become my next great discovery. I know that I have found some perfumes that I will look back on in 20 years as fondly as I do my Opiums and my Laurens and my Niki de St. Falls. Things like Violet Ida from Miller Harris and Narciso Poudre from Narciso Rodriguez. I know that there are some timeless classic perfumes that I want to save up for and add into my collection a little bit at a time. Things like Chanel's Coromandel, Gris Dior from Dior, Shalimar Eau de Cologne from Guerlain, and Musk Pallida from Hermes. I know that there will always be another perfume I'll hear about from a trusted source in the perfume community that I'll want to try, and I'll probably just take the plunge on. I know that I'll want to support independent perfumers and add some of their perfumes to my world, or maybe try out one of their discovery sets. I know that I will always be in the research rabbit hole, and I'll be looking at note combinations on Parfumo, and I'll want to pick up a sample or two every now and then to try something that's maybe a little bit too expensive to blind buy. I know that I will love sitting down with a sample and a cup of tea and my perfume journal on a Saturday afternoon. And I know that I love, like super duper love, talking about perfumes with other people who love it just as much as I do. And I'm really, really good with all of that. I don't feel like I'm in a rush to smell it all. I don't feel like I have to smell every hyped perfume that's out there. I don't feel like I have to always be looking for the next great discovery. I'm just open to whatever comes my way. So there we have it, my 6 stages of fragrance madness, starting with my entry point into this world of perfume and every phase of perfume enthusiasm that followed, all the way to where I am today. And making this video also made me wonder if there's going to be a 7th stage to come, maybe one that I haven't even realized yet. I was also thinking, as I wrote down some notes for this video, that every once in a while I can kind of like regress into prior stages. Like right now, I'd say I'm doing a little bit more blind buying again. And I've also been keen to sample a little bit more. But I suppose I wouldn't call it like a full-on regression because I don't feel like as frenzied about sampling or blind buying as I once did. These little pulls feel a lot more measured, a lot more intentional, a lot more purposeful than they once did when I was like going ham, scooping up bottles and samples galore. So before I sign off, a big thank you to Pep for making your video and encouraging me to do one of my own. It was really, really fun to think back on the trajectory of this perfume obsession that's been going on for really like the vast majority of my life. I love topics like this in the perfume community. I think they are just as interesting and just as entertaining to think about and talk about as it is to think and talk about actual perfumes. So now that I have been fully rickrolled into stage 6 of perfume madness, the peaceful, self-assured, relaxed, almost meditative stage, I will end with a very big thank you. Thank you for spending your time here with me. Thank you for chatting perfumes with me in the comments. Whatever stage of perfume madness you are in, I am fully behind you. I fully support you in your enjoyment of perfume. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.